Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Hello, everyone.
Je crois que il faut montrer mon image pour que je
I think
puisse commencer l'événement.
we'll take down the image here. Welcome, everyone. We're here today for an event organized by the Canadian Network for Accountability of Companies. We're very happy to have you here with us this morning, especially our three international speakers who will be presenting. The Canadian network exists across the country. It brings together over 40 organizations, labor unions, advocates for human rights, for the environment, community organizations, international solidarity organizations who seek to ensure the accountability of Canadian corporations overseas. We are here to plead in favor of the adoption of an act regulating the defense of human rights and the environment in order to force companies to respect human rights and environmental rights internationally, allowing people to pursue them in the Canadian legal system. As we've seen over the past few years, voluntary mechanisms are insufficient for ensuring the respect of human rights. We've also seen that the ways in which transnational corporations work lead to a lack of accountability, including a lack of transparency, widespread subcontracting, and most often, respect of human rights and the environment is understood as a cost rather than important principles that must be respected. At a time when we're thinking about issues of climate change, when we're calling into question the current economic model, it's critical that we put in place mechanisms that ensure a fair transition, that ensure that our companies respect human rights, whether here or abroad. And legislation on the subject would be a key aspect of preventing problems and providing reparations for injuries to human rights and the environment. I want to remind you that in March 2022, a bill was submitted. It's very close to the model that was produced by the Canadian Network for Corporate Accountability. It is supported by the network. There's still a long road before this bill would be adopted, but it's critical that we take this opportunity collectively and use it as a catalyst to educate Canadians, Quebecers, people across the country on this important issue and on the really significant impacts and devastation caused by Canadian companies, the impacts that these have on populations, often the most marginalized and impoverished populations around the world. And this is what our three speakers will be presenting today. I'll remind you that there are numerous countries in Europe that have already adopted this type of legislation. It's not idealist or utopian to believe that Canada can do this as well. France has done it, Norway, Germany, European Union is working on a similar process, and it's time now for Canada to catch up on this issue and find itself among its European counterparts. It's an honor today for me to present our three guests. And before passing them the floor, I would like to note how you can access the interpretation service. We have simultaneous interpretation. You should see it at the bottom right of your screen. There's a small icon, looks like a globe. You can click on that and choose the language of your choice. It could be English, French, or Spanish. I think that this might be put in the chat as well in other languages to ensure that everyone can have access to interpretation. So there you are. Without any further delay, I would present our first speaker, Josefina. Tunki is the first woman elected as the president to the Indigenous Peoples Council, Shuar Arutam, which represents 47 Shuar Arutam communities. Josefina is known for her strong resistance to extractive industries that are threatening her territory. As a result, she has faced discrimination by the state and has received death threats from Canadian mining companies who exploit the sovereign territories of the Shuar Arutam people without its consent. I would therefore pass the floor to Josefina.
Sorry about that. My apologies. I am now connected. Yes. So Josefina just introduced herself as representing the 47 communities in the Shuar Arutam peoples, representing 2,300 hectares in the Ecuadorian Amazon, which is a territory full of rivers where the communities are sitting along those river systems. Josefina says they're an ancestral people that have lived there for time immemorable. And yeah, they've been living there for time immemorable, and that they have been working in balance and in harmony with the environment to protect it, not destroy it. Thank you very much. To continue. As the president of the Shuar Arutam People's Government in Ecuador, since I took this position in the association with my government council, we have been trying to administer our organization in accordance with our plan for life, that is in order to comply with decisions that have been taken at the level of the General Council, which promotes life in our territory. The Shuar Arutam peoples So we have four areas of work within our PSHA. So with respect to our territory, our forests, our ancestral knowledges, and the land. And so with all of our presidents and the councils, we have tried to coordinate and bring forth actions according to our bases, our peoples, and their thoughts with respect to the conservation of our territory. And we have national and international work that's to strengthen our goals. As the president of the Pueblo Shuar Arutam, I have taken over this position in the government. And we have tried to defend our lands. And this is very difficult. This has been very challenging for our organization, which was destroyed by the mining companies that have been working in our territory. And so when I assumed the administration, it was our organization was destroyed. But now, as I am the president, I am a woman and have a proposal and an idea since I was born and just until now, that I would like to drive this organization forward with sincerity, with commitment and dignity and honesty to bring us forward so that we can think about where we can become and where we can arrive as a generation for life of everyone in the communities. And so with this objective, the company, the government, the Ecuadorian government, which represents obviously Ecuador at the international level, they have always negotiated with these large extractivist companies who have been dedicated to destroying our environment in order for that a minuscule group of people will benefit from this. Because in reality, the major part of us humans in the world, we think differently than these people. And so organizations like the PSHA, like the CONAIDE and CONFENAIE, other indigenous organizations in Ecuador, our representatives, our communities, we were never consulted by the government, nor were we informed directly. The Canadian companies, just like Solares Resources, is in our Warden Center in the PSHA territory, which is collective land that we have the titles to. It is our land. That territory is everyone's. All of us Ecuadorians who love our country and our land, we consider our home, our house, and this is where we realize all of our activities diversely. And so the company has been trying for many years, to overcome our organizations or seek strategies to conquer our leaders. But me as a person, they tried. It's very clear. They tried with me. They tried to offer me resources. They offered me many things like vehicles to the PSHA organization as well. They offered us a house, an administrative house for the PSHA that we already have, but they offered us another one. They told us that they were gonna give us these items, but we're going to do it better on our own. We don't want to proceed getting these things easily. We want to work ourselves to achieve them. We want to reinforce the visions that our grandparents and our ancestors had. It's not just Solares, this company. There are many companies. We have been condemning their actions internationally, nationally. We've been condemning the company, and the company seems to be advancing even faster. They've been working on this mountain range where the rivers are born, like the Zamora and Santiago rivers. That company continues to advance with their roadway to destruction of our environment. Meanwhile, we have been writing documents. We entered into Solares' office. We demanded that they receive us and understand our position. They never expected our documents, our complaints, and we refuse to receive their documents because we don't want to converse with them. This Canadian company and the Canadian government is invading our territories, is plundering our territory. The Canadian government does not proclaim against this action. They don't say anything. And their companies continue to advance, continue to build camps for the personnel that are going to live there in the future. They continue to drill. There's hundreds of people that are trying to colonize our lands. Up until now, we've had many assemblies, and we have resolved in all of those assemblies that we do not want mining. In the interfederational councils, we've sent documents of our positions, and they've never listened to us. They've never listened to our position. And so we've said, now this is enough. We have many leaders that are anti-miners, and they're being persecuted. They're being followed, not just me as a president, but I'm also receiving these threats. There's many leaders, women and men, who are being threatened, who are being red listed. Federico Velázquez, the president of Solares in Ecuador, is acting against us and paying external people to attack us. It's very clear that he's following many of our leaders. He is the person behind these acts and attacks. In March, we had the opportunity to meet the Canadian Embassy, and they never gave us any positive response for the defense of our territories. Actually, the Canadian ambassador told us that we have to have another meeting about the mining company, because Solares Resources could never pull out of the territory because they've been there for many years, and that we would have to have many meetings to try to convince. We're not willing to wait any longer. As the president of the PSHA, in many speeches, I have put myself in a position of danger to say Solares needs to leave. I told the ambassador that this is our land and the company is not welcome and they need to leave. We are not interested in dialogue. We want the company to withdraw itself immediately from our territory. This company is from Canada, and that is what I solicited from the Canadian Embassy. I didn't want to make pretty speeches. I didn't want to go around in circles. I wanted to be very clear. But the ambassador said, well, we should make a plan of meetings about this issue. That was not a satisfactory decision for us. This Canadian company is invading our territories. This is invasion. They are plundering our territories. SolGold, another company, the Ecocorrientes, a Chinese company, the same, all have been coordinating with Solares. Solares is continuing this project of extractivism in our territories. And now there's a hydroelectric project, which is another Chinese company, which is also in our territory. We are being assaulted. They are destroying our lands. And for this reason, we're defending our lands. We defend our human rights, the rights of life, the rights to life to everyone in the world. The water is more important than gold. The environment, which is being contaminated with so many industries. These negative impacts, we are fighting against them. We are sustaining to the world as Indigenous Amazonian peoples. This is why I ask and propose to continue to fight together for our human rights and for Indigenous nationalities around the world. We are in a strong position here to defend our territory, the life, our forests, biodiversity. Because we know the planet is only left with a few years left, and it's going to be destroyed. Global warming is advancing every day, and this is so sad as humans. It's sad that humans only think like millionaires and only think in the richness or wealth for a small, minuscule group that exists in our earth. But the majority of humanity, we understand the value and the importance of Mother Earth, of this planet that we live in without distinction.
Donc, sans plus tarder.
So without any further delay, and I just changed language, I would pass the floor to Reverend Chikoya. He's an Anglican priest who serves as the Secretary General for the Council of Churches in Zambia in 2007, a convinced ecumenicist. He's particularly interested in management of the environment, resources, and with an interest in governance, peace, and sustainability. Reverend Chikoya.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be part and parcel of this very, very important webinar. And greetings to all those in attendance and fellow panelists. I'll proceed to my presentation. Someone had promised they were going to screen, but anyway, I will just proceed. The Council of Churches in Zambia has, among many other departments, a wing called the Social and Economic Justice.
Sorry, I think the film is ready. Sorry, there was a short delay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kimakolwe Township, located in Solwezi district of the northwestern province of Zambia. A community of over 5,000 households whose livelihoods depend on mining activities in the district. On the 9th of October 2021, the Council of Churches in Zambia, a representation of 24 member churches in partnership with the Joint Country Program, JCP, undertook a relief visit in the township of Kimakolwe.
We are in Solwezi for what is called a reality visit. A reality visit is a visit that is organized and involves selected church leaders that visit a community to appreciate, to observe, to understand, to engage, so that they can be able to understand both the highs and lows that that community experiences.
Many of the times we are on the pulpit preaching, but sometimes we may be separated from reality. So when you are on such a visit, on such a trip, I think it brings practical understanding to the issues that are affecting the community.
Okay, thank you. Do I proceed?
Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you. That is.
If you could turn on your camera, please. Thank you.
So that was just the first minute of the documentary that was made following what we did in the northwestern part of Zambia. So you can access it. I think it's been shared in full. So basically, let me go. I began by appreciating the organizers for extending an invitation. Thanks to Dr. Kristen for bringing me on board. and the Canadian human rights defenders for this opportunity. The first page there just indicates the department under which this issue sits, which is the Social, Economic and Justice Department, where we want to promote social, economic justice and accountable governance. And the presentation, we can move to the next page. The outline, human rights in mining. There's something about CCZ, the project outlook, the background information, environmental justice, labor rights, compensation and displacements, and then conclusion. That is the outline of my presentation. Then this page gives us an overview of what the Council of Churches in Zambia is. The Council of Churches in Zambia is an ecumenical organization that strengthens Christian unity and advocates for social justice, peace, and development. This is done through resource mobilization, facilitation, capacity building, coordination, among many others. We do not discriminate in our service delivery, but we are informed by our theology and our principles. We move to the next slide. We work in partnership. The United Church of Canada is our partner that has been giving us support. That has really gone a long way in terms of administrative work. Of course, going forward from this year, it is more specific, but under the programs relating to mining and natural resources governance, we've partnered with the Joint Country Program, which is involved or composed of Norwegian Church Aid and the Danish Church Aid. And there we have programs aimed at promoting transparency and accountability. And through this, CCZ has contributed to awareness raising on natural resource management, and also being a platform or creating a platform for dialogue between community, the mining firms, and government, facilitated by the church. And so we run two projects, basically the Umozi and Kuyanjana projects. Umozi is oneness, Kuyanjana is coming together. We move to the next page. Why are we involved? Why are we bothered? We should be preparing for heaven after all. But it is clear there are high poverty levels amidst plenty. Zambia is a well-endowed country with natural resources, that cannot even be compared to places like Dubai that have become tourist centers, and yet a lot wallow in poverty. So that is a snapshot of some of the, you have the resource copper there, you have the children and the kind of structures they live in. We move to the next page. That is just a scripture that reminds us that if we can't speak for those, we need to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, not because they don't have a voice, but because they may not know their rights and a platform, they may not have that platform. We move to the next page. We state that poverty is a pain, it is like a disease. And so again, that depiction of how people in a country that has so many resources, powerful mining firms and natural resources, and yet people have to fend. And that is an example on where the stone crushers there, artisanal mining, where they are largely not that supported. We move to the next page. Yeah, so in terms of the outlook of our projects, Umozi means oneness. It is a Chewa word, a local language word. And so it's a project against inequalities. We want to advocate, and this is being implemented across 10 districts in 4 provinces, the southern part of Zambia, eastern part, Wapula, and northwestern parts. Northwestern is where that video or documentary was captured. And so we have this project running for the next 5 years. And basically the scripture is just there to guide us why we do what we do next. The Kuyanjana project is a faith in action project, but it has an interfaith angle. We are working with a Muslim NGO, an Islamic NGO. Again, we want to strengthen the civil society so that they can be much, and the faith actors are much more capacitated to check and provide checks and balances at local level. And so we have created 10 interfaith committees in 10 districts because we believe that working alone, yes, you can run faster, but when you work or run with somebody, you will be able to cover a longer distance. The next slide. Now, background information about human rights violations in mining. Human rights are basic rights. They are freedoms that belong to every person in the world from birth until death. And so human rights violations in the extractive sector have negatively impacted communities residing in these resource-rich areas. And one such area is the northwestern part of Zambia with the copper belt. We can argue that the new copper belt is the northwestern part of Zambia. And so in the extractive sector, one would argue that they're a leading violator of human rights. And these include forced relocations, evictions of local communities, loss of livelihoods, pollution of the environment, and the consequent health effects on local community, destruction of the environment and ecosystems, poor working conditions, and child labor, and worsened by excessive use of force by state and private security actors. We could move to the next phase. And so when you look at the environment, the impacts, when you look at environmental justice from mining operations, they are significant and very severe, especially in developing countries like Zambia. In Zambia, the impacts are both historical and ongoing because of mining operations. We have Kabwe, for example, contaminated by lead, and the mines are abandoned now. And the main environmental challenges are air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, geotechnical issues, and land degradation. And in some cases, these mines, they don't cover them after the mine expires. And so they are rendered useless. They can't be used anymore. We move to the next. The Swed Watch report on unsustainable copper mining in Zambia. You look at the pictorial examples shown there, cracked houses, copper that comes with a cost because of contaminations of river bodies. People cannot, vegetation cannot grow. People are still getting water from, distant places. And, that is a BBC covered item. It's in the public space. And so you look at food security as one of the effects that communities suffer, lowered income levels as pollution of soil and water caused by discharge has degraded the farmland. Relocation of communities following the establishment of mining projects has proved challenging because, you will not transfer the same kind of environment that people used to have when you take them to another area. Can I have the next slide? Labor rights. You have challenges of poor working conditions and child labor. Looking at the issue of the legal framework in Zambia, that govern the rights and obligation of employers and employees in the mining sector. Zambia is mainly contained in the Industrial and Labor Relations Act, Chapter 269 of the laws of Zambia. And the registration governing employment contracts and procedures and conditions of work are mainly contained in the Employment Code Act of 2019 of laws of Zambia. The next slide. We continue with the labor rights. It's been observed in the mining sector that there's an abuse of labor laws and especially associated with mining firms of Asian origin. In one case, one mine was closed and a call from the high office or state house, it was reopened. So we could move to the next slide. I'll have to run through, my time is not there. Let's go to the next one.
Sorry, Reverend, you have 1 minute left.
Yes, let's go to the next one. The next one. The next one again, keep on moving. I want to go to a slide which is talking about human rights. Yeah, okay. So that is an example of some of the effects of displacements caused by mines, and there'll be very meager compensation given. And there was one where a chief was hoodwinked and gave a huge chunk of land, but fortunately it was reversed, but there are ongoing legal battles around it. And so in a nutshell, I'd say Canadian mining firms, and like any other mining firms, stand guilty in terms of not really following and upholding human rights in their approach to mining in Zambia. There may be some good activities here and there, but there's lack of consistency compared to the standards they would uphold in Canada, for example, or in any of these Western countries. When they come to Africa and Zambia, there's a change. So there must be consistency. Time may not be our best friend. Could we go to the last slide? Of course, this will be shared. And so focus of while states are primarily a focus of mining after acquiring the mining license has been to increase the shareholders' value at the expense of surrounding communities, environment, and the workers. This has relegated the welfare of the community to a lesser position in terms of priority by the new mine owners. And this inevitably impacts the rights of members of the mining community and worsens already existing poverty and vulnerability. The next will be the last slide. And those are examples of, there is a mandate by the nation to protect and respect human rights, but many transnational companies are very strong economically and politically and will get around these issues. Multinationals should be required to protect and respect human rights wherever they are consistently. So the absence of a legal binding instrument is difficult to, makes it difficult to hold them accountable. And with our case, most mining firms have shown little or no difference to the above mentioned scenario. With that, I want to say thank you, and I hope it has given us an insight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend. This is a compelling case, and the violations of human rights and the destruction of the environment your community has lived is really atrocious, and it does call for a binding instrument in Canada. So I'll present Kalpona Akter. Just to let you know that if you have any questions, you can ask them in the Q&A section below your screen. After Kalpona's presentation, we'll have a short discussion, so you can start to think of your questions. Donc, Kalpona Akter a été enfant ouvrière.
Kalpona Akter was a child worker in Bangladesh, holding factories, garment factories, despite enduring abuse and retribution for organizing fellow garment workers to demand fair labor rights, including facing threats and finally being fired from the factory where she was working. She has never stopped her struggle. As the founder and executive director of the Bangladesh Center for Worker Solidarity, Akter campaigns for fair wages, the safety for garment factory workers, and the right to form labor unions and bargain collectively. Kalpona, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Amélie, and very good morning to everyone. It was wonderful to, hear from Josefina as well as, Reverend Chikoya, sorry. I think it's a great moment to holding this webinar, and I really wanted to thank CNCA for that. It's a great moment because we are just 5 days after Earth Day, the International Earth Day. We are 3 days after Rana Plaza 9 years commemoration. We are just 3 days before the International Labor Day. So it's a really momentum to speak about this human rights due diligence law. So for a bit context, my country is known for the second largest apparel producer in the country, in the world after China. We have 4 million people are working in this industry, and majority of them are young female workers. And many of them are climate victim. So yeah, thanks for those photos. Yeah, many of them are climate victim, and they had to flee from the countryside to ending their life in a low paid job. Because when you are in a disaster, the survival comes first. So due to this survival, the workers just ending up in a low paid job and depriving from all the rights that they can enjoy. Those are in our book. So my country also, very famous for union busting, not respecting the worker rights. And the photo you see, watching now, it is Rana Plaza, a 9-story building that has been collapsed 9 years ago with, over 4,000 workers, which has been left 1,138 workers died and over 2,000 workers lifetime injured. And yet we did not get justice for workers. The compensation that has been provided to the workers, it wasn't adequate. The victims yet, going through all these that they had to face in Rana Plaza. But luckily that safety has been improved a little bit. But for this company, for these, MNCs, the multinational companies, including Canadian, what they're putting us in, again, they're putting us in a low paid job. Our wages, our minimum wages is $95 a month, which is not enough for one people full month cost, let alone if she has 2 children at home. She literally, starving with her children. She cannot provide or cannot ensure that children has education. Half of the money she need to spend for just housing, and it's not a dream house. And we are keep fighting every single day to make these changes. And the changes is not coming free. Our workers being threatened, beaten, falsely charged when they try to organize themselves and join with union. And it is happening with the human rights defenders as well, regardless they're defending the labors or environment or human or feminist, everyone. They are facing equal threats from the state and from the manufacturers and business group as well. But we are the people with bravery as well. When they defeat us, we give 2 steps back, but in the same time, we give like 3 steps forward after that, and we keep fighting to make changes. And we believe, because it is a global supply chain. The Canadian companies, those are sourcing the apparels from my country. It's a supply chain, and we are just down to the supply chain. And these companies cannot just clean their hands and saying that I am buying the clothes and it is not my responsibility to take care of your labor rights, your human rights, your climate, and your feminist rights or your child rights. It is your responsibility. It is the company's responsibility. This company, I think they have done enough. It is a time for them to make accountable and to do the right thing. What I really wanted to see, the legislation that we are talking about, human rights due diligence legislation, it includes human rights. It has a safeguard for women and children. It includes the workers' wages, safety. It includes climate issues. Like when we talk about climate, I think next 200 years, water we already has been used in our country just producing clothes. It's 1 million pieces of the clothes we are producing every day, and it is ongoing. It's not going to end in next 10 or 20 years. It will be ongoing. So these companies do have responsibility. And very specifically, what I wanted to see in this legislation, the meaningful stakeholder engagement and that should be required for all steps and all aspects of due diligence. Like the union and NGOs just should not be, should not be give one issue to see the risk management or do the oversight. No, we want the engagement of civil society and the trade union. That is really important. We just don't want it to see that the law just include established businesses. It also need to include the medium and small size businesses as well, because at some point they are responsible too. We need to have justice to remedy, especially for those whose rights are violated. I mean, we need a transparency on that. The mandatory value chain mapping and transparency really needed in this law. Those need to be there. And when I talk about the remedy, I really wanted to, access to remedy, I really wanted to mention a few things. Like, I'm giving just reference of Rana Plaza a couple of times. Yet we knowing that, we did not get justice for those victims yet. And the companies and factories and the building owners was equally responsible for that preventable accident where we lost these lives. So what we want, the remediation must be seen in integral and meaningful human rights due diligence with the focus on workers and human and other right holders' right for violations to be remediated. Is the first thing. And that requires ensuring that the burden of proof is on the company, not on the client with the limited resources. Like every time what factory says, oh, we have a, the company says, oh, we have an agreement with these companies, like regardless what kind of companies in the ground are, they say, oh, it is their responsibility to ensure that human rights are not violated in down to the chain. But it's in the same time, they are giving a low price, and that is not done. There should be a good price and they should take responsibility as well to defending the human rights in the towards to down to the chain. Ensuring that companies remain liable even if they use audit certification and so on, which we have shown to be the structural fault. Like many times we have seen that these companies do have some sort of certification, but that doesn't save workers' lives or people's lives or defenders' lives in the country like ours, in Zambia, in Bangladesh, in elsewhere. Ensuring the victim have enough time to bring claims to the court. Like we want this access to remedy, like our workers, we people, those are in our country, we should get access to remedy, access to your court to sue these companies because they didn't do the right thing. Ensuring that independent organizations have the rights to represent the victim and act on their behalf. This is really important. So these are like, the few things that I really wanted to highlight that we wanted to see in this legislation when you are working. So I wanted to stop here again, thanking CNCA, for this webinar. And I hope that something great will be come out after this webinar. People will be really raise voice and push the government to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kalpona. So I guess, donc, je vais parler en français.
I'll switch to French. So we would now be arriving at the question and answer period. I would invite Reverend Chikoya and Josefina to turn their cameras on. I believe all of your presentations really did show how companies profit from the violation of human rights and from environmental destruction. They must be made responsible for remediating these situations and providing justice to affected populations. I think this bill could contribute to that, even if it is insufficient. And among the questions that could be asked, and that is given in the question and answer box, what would be the primary demands for Canadian citizens regarding today's theme, regarding the Act. I think a number of you had made more concrete calls for action, but if there were other calls for solidarity that you wanted to make, this would be a good time for that. We also had another question. How do you stay hopeful? Maybe a bit more of a philosophical question, but your courage is certainly inspiring. I think that's what's being said by this question in another way. I would also invite anyone else who would like to ask a question to write it in the question and answer section at the bottom of the screen. We can stay a few minutes later for this discussion period. If you like to stay an extra 10 minutes, then that's fine. And Kalpona, Mr. Chikoya, Madame Tunki, if you wanted to answer either of these questions.
Maybe I can give it a go. I think from my end, what is important is, the consistency. These same companies, if and when they're operating in their respective countries, they are much better in terms of labor laws, they're much better in terms of environmental care and all these matters. But when they cross over, there's an issue of taking advantage of the weak legal systems and policies in our respective countries. But here it's not an issue of taking advantage of weak systems. It's about bringing the standard that should be consistently upheld so that communities that host mines are much better off. I'm one that believes that we have been recipients of corporate social responsibility crumbs for a long time. There's one mine when we were doing an alternative mining in Dhaka in one of the districts. They were proud that they were supplying a daily newspaper, a printed newspaper, one to the school library. And we told them that is a joke. You paint a school and that is something to write home about. No, the people need to get into the boardroom. Of course, that requires our own legal reforms. But when you have better standards, why not bring them and consistently apply them? So that is one thing that should be consistently driven home. Thank you.
Juste avant que les personnes commencent à quitter.
Before people start leaving, you can see the calls for action in the chat. There is a petition that's available online to support adoption of this bill by the Canadian government. We also encourage you to go and meet with your member of parliament, regardless of their party. Even if you get just 25 signatures in your writing, then that would help the petition become receivable. We would encourage you to continue your actions, and the Canadian Network on Corporate Accountability is going to remain very active on this, as will its members, to continue promoting this bill and putting political pressure on the government to ensure that it's adopted with real teeth, that we can take action. We see the degree to which the violations of human rights are absolutely atrocious, whether it's in Zambia, Bangladesh, or Ecuador. Canada is definitely behind the game right now.
I just wanted to, share that in the action that just remember that we need this job and we definitely want them, but we want them with dignity. So the Canadian citizen, you all definitely can make sure that making accountable these companies, that our jobs are dignified. We have living wage, we have safe workplace, we have, our factories, workers have voice at factories for collective bargaining. The factories are gender-based violence free, and our climate are being taken care. So if we do have, then we are dignified. yeah, I mean, just think that we are human too. So we need to be treated as a human. That is crucial. Thank you.
And sadly, the companies seems like they need to be reminded of that. Josefina, ¿quiere responder o hacer una conclusión?
Quiero responder las dos preguntas.
I'm going to respond to both questions.
Del derecho ambiental.
With respect to the environmental rights and the destruction of the environment, I propose that these companies that are in our territory should respect environmental rights, these global environmental rights, because these companies are violating our rights to life. And so they need to be applicable. This law for human rights and the environment should oblige them to try to support, to recover the harms and losses that they've produced in our territories, in their plunder of our territories in Ecuador and in this indigenous Ecuadorian territory. And with respect to the other question, the Shuar Arutam peoples, we have not asked that this company or others that they support us in this reparations. What are they going to repair? The animals that are dead, the trees that are being cut down, never, those will never come back. The lands have already been moved. They've built infrastructure that's huge, and the forest will never be the same. The forest will never be the same. And this is why we are sad, and this is why we are proposing to Canada, to the Canadian government, that withdraw its companies from our territory. We are advising one more time, we do not want to commit other acts. We just are asking that the government shouldn't ask about, or shouldn't talk about how many investments they've done. This money that they've put in does not compare with the lives that have been destroyed. These huge trees that have been cut down will never be recovered with money. Life is life. Life will not recover in this way. We only ask once more, with respect to human rights, to defend the rights to life, as an indigenous nationality like we are, we're so smart. We don't want the Canadian companies to put these attacks on all sides. What we are asking is for them to leave, because we know that the life is, everything is included in life. The fish, the forests, Mother Earth. For all these reasons, one more time, we propose that the Canadian government to protect human rights. Let's defend life in a unified way. Pull your companies out of our territories. They're not doing anything but contaminating and destroying the planet. Leave us alone. Leave our territories. Leave us in peace. This is the only thing that we're asking in name of all of us who are not being able to take advantage of this space. Pull away from our territory. Leave us alone.
I
think that indeed we have a collective responsibility toward the role of the Canadian government, which is very intensively promotes investments in mining companies around the world through its ambassadors. So not only are there many members of the Canadian Network for Corporate Accountability who is trying to put political pressure to ensure that populations, especially indigenous populations, are respected. And of course, we know that indigenous women play a key role in the defense of their territories. Numerous groups of the CNCA will be able to contribute to putting pressure on government to accompany you in all of the risks you're facing in Ecuador. So, see a comment. Peterson would like to better understand the socio-political and economic context of mining activities and the resistance to these projects. I don't know if in only a few minutes we could address that question, but maybe Mr. Chikoya, if you'd like to speak to that a little bit more.
Oh, your microphone. Sorry, Reverend, we can't hear you.
I also wasn't able to hear clearly.
Okay, sorry.
Just a short one on the question, yes?
Yes, someone would like to know more about the context of the implementation of mining companies abroad and the resistance. But if you could say just a few words, I know it's it would be hard to cover in the short time.
About mining firms and resistance within the Zambian setting. Yeah, I mean resistance by the host communities. Yeah, I think the challenge that we have in Zambia is that the traditional leaders have tended to have too much power and have signed agreements that the local communities have not really, they wake up one day and they're told to leave. There have been flare-ups, but not as much as what my Josefina was talking about. There have been flare-ups. Maybe we should be a bit more vigorous, more, militant. But there have been clashes regarding what is called the Black Mountain. You have a phenomenon of what is called the Jerabos. Jerabos are more or less like gangsters in a sense. They invade the mining area and they're trying to survive. And so they can be rough, people can be have been killed, and they've also died because they're not safe in their mining activities. And so there have been clashes in that regard. One chief was hoodwinked, flown over an area, made to sign a document that gave a huge tract of land. But that was resisted, and fortunately it was overturned by the government, but there are legal battles ongoing. That is what I would say. There are agitations increasing in the country. People are saying we are not benefiting from these mining activities. We've lost our ancestral land, our burial sites. We've lost our capacity to, earn a living that environment used to give them. And so if not properly handled, it's a volcano that will erupt. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I think that we're coming up to the end of the event. Unfortunately, it's so wonderful to have the opportunity to listen to you speak about these really negative, toxic impacts that Canadian companies have in your countries, but also to hear about your struggles. And I think it's important that you not be seen as victims who are vulnerable, but really as defenders of human rights of the territory. The work that you do is critical, and you are leading the struggle for us as well. As Josefina was saying, you only have one planet Earth. The air is a common collective good, so are the lands and the waters, and you contribute to defending them. For us who are facing these criminal Canadian companies, we are witnesses to the immense violence that many people are subjected to, whether it's the local community, the workers, land defenders. And so I think your call has been heard. It is an extremely important call to action. It must be followed up on urgently by the Canadian population. We have to mobilize collectively to face the pressure that will arise from a number of different Canadian companies. This bill isn't going to be passed unless we can come together to make clear how necessary it is. I would therefore invite you to follow along the activities for the Canadian Network on Corporate Accountability. I also invite you once again to sign the petition online. And even more importantly, if you're able to collect 25 signatures on the paper petition and go and meet with your member of parliament to explain the situation, we have documents that can help to support you in those advocacy efforts. Those are available from the CNCA. And we are only going to succeed if we work together. And I do believe that as all of our speakers have told us, this is a collective struggle. We must act in solidarity with their struggles. And this is one concrete thing that we can do over the short and medium term to respond to the horrifying violations of human rights that we've seen. It's provide them with access to justice. And I do believe that it's our responsibility here, considering the serious human rights violations, environmental destruction that are caused by Canadian companies internationally. Thank you so much, Kalpona, Akter. Thank you, Reverend Chikoya. Thank you, Josefina, Tunki, for not only being here today, but for all of the work that you do, for your struggles, for your mobilizations. We are going to continue following your work closely, and don't hesitate. If there's anything that we can do to act concretely in solidarity with you, please share your calls for action with us. And thank you everyone for being here with us today. We had more than 60 people listening to the webinar online with us. It will also be available. The recordings will be available. And with that, I'll wish you an excellent day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you for having us. It's a blessing. Thank you.